Welcome to Inspiration and Transformation from the Banks of the Ganga with Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati, an American sannyasi living at the Parmarth Niketan ashram in Rishikesh, India. Sadhvi is president of the Divine Shakti Foundation, a charitable organization bringing education, vocational training, upliftment, and empowerment programs to women and children. Sadhvi is also Secretary General of the Global Interfaith Wash Alliance and Director of the world-famous International Yoga Festival. Join the musings of an American sannyasi as Sadhvi shares the wisdom and teachings of her guru, His Holiness Pujya Swami Chidanand Saraswatiji.
Welcome, everyone, to Inspiration and Transformation from the holy banks of the sacred Ganga River in the land of Rishikesh, India. If I love God, and I'm always thinking about God, but then what about loving someone else? Always thinking about that person. If you really love anyone or anything, and you really love them, what you're loving is God. Because the essence of everything and everyone is God. So whether it's a human being, whether it's a tree, whether it's a sacred river, whether it's God without any form, whether it's God in the form of Krishna or Ram or Shiva or Jesus Christ, doesn't matter. Because if I'm really loving, content to content, essence to essence, soul to soul, not body mind to body mind, then what I'm loving is God. Think about it. If I love you, and it's not about your physical body, it's not about your words, it's not about your actions, it's not about your behavior, it's not about what you look like, it's not about where you come from. It's nothing to do with your physical expression. It's nothing to do with your actions, your words. What's left? What am I loving then? What is it in you I'm loving then? Your essence. What's your essence? What is the essence of who you are? Soul. Divinity. God. So that's why I always say, when people say, how do I love God? I can't love God. No problem. Love anything. But really love them. Don't love what they say to you, what they do, what they give you. Really love them. Essence to essence. What you're loving is the divine in them. The divine in you is loving the divine in them. When we say namaste, it's the divine in me is bowing to the divine in you. It's not, hey, how you doing? Looking good. The divine in me. The genderless, bank accountless, ageless, heightless, weightless, skin colorless, divine in me bows to the divine in you. Sadly, most of us leave that with namaste. But if you can really take that namaste into your love, you're loving God.
You're listening to OTR FM, part of the IOM radio network.
Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the Internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single
Circle of Hearts Radio is a sanctuary on the airwaves. Join me, Grandmother Alaya, in the circle on Sunday 2 p.m. Eastern as I share information to both enlighten and nourish your soul.
Hi, this is Christina Ricci with RAIN. Every 2 minutes, another American is sexually assaulted. If you or someone you know has been sexually assaulted, you are not alone. Help is just a call or click away through the National Sexual Assault Hotline. Please call 1-800-656-HOPE, that's HOPE, or visit RAIN.org, that's RAINN.org.
Brought to you by RAIN and this station.
Welcome back to Inspiration and Transformation. I'm so glad to have you all back here with me. What is the difference between tolerating each other and having mutual respect for each other? So the difference between tolerating and respecting. And I would take it even a step further, which is accepting. Tolerating is far from our highest goal. But even respect, while certainly a higher goal than tolerance, isn't the highest we can go. We can go from tolerance to respect, and then from respect, we can go to acceptance, and from acceptance, we can go to love. So, too frequently, though, in our families, in our workplaces, in our communities of people of different religions, different colors, you hear so frequently people talking about tolerating each other. We should create a world of tolerance. And tolerance is certainly better than intolerance. But as we work, as we grow, as we expand, we have to really allow ourselves to ask ourselves, what's the best I can do? If there's someone, different race, different religion, different culture, different sexual orientation, different personality, is the best I can do just to tolerate them? No. I can actually embrace them. And so tolerance tends to be something that we do with a wall between us. So I will agree to coexist with you on my side of the wall. You agree to coexist with me on your side of the wall, but there's still a wall between us. The minute we get actually into respect and love, that wall disintegrates. And so that's what's really essential, is our world today, we need a lot more than tolerance. First, we need to build the tolerance, but then we need to go beyond it. But as we ask ourselves, well, all right, so let's start with tolerance. How do we even build that? It requires us to actually breathe into the awareness that the universe has no responsibility to act according to how I dictate. That the universe has no responsibility to do what I say, to dance according to my tune, to jump when I say jump, because my lack of tolerance comes because on some level I believe that you should be the way I want you to be. If I don't tolerate you, it's a conscious choice I've made. It's a conscious choice I've made that says I'm right, you're wrong. I know the way things should be. I know the way people should be. I know the way that you should speak. I know the way you should act. I know what's right. And you are wrong. Whether you're the wrong color, whether you're the wrong religion, whether you're the wrong socioeconomic status, whether you're the wrong sexual orientation, whatever it may be, whether you load the dishwasher in the wrong way, it's me saying, I know the right way, and I refuse to budge. I refuse to bend. That's what lack of tolerance is. Lack of tolerance is a very conscious decision I have made not to budge, not to bend, not to accept that there might be another way. And so this is where actually the practice of moving from intolerance to tolerance, from tolerance to respect, from respect to acceptance, and from acceptance to love is actually a spiritual practice on my part, because it requires me to change. It requires me to open and soften. It breaks the walls that are inside of me. My lack of tolerance doesn't only hurt the person I don't tolerate. It hurts me. Think in your life about someone who you think in your mind, I just can't tolerate that person. Can't tolerate that guy, can't tolerate that lady, can't tolerate it, won't tolerate it. As you think about that, take a moment, close your eyes, and really conjure up in your mind the image of that person you just can't tolerate. Think about them for a moment. Think about them doing whatever you can't tolerate, or acting that way, or just being there. You just can't tolerate them. Notice what happens in your body as you think about them. Notice especially in your heart. Notice in your belly. Notice in your face. Now think about someone you love. The person you love most unconditionally in the world. Think about them. Notice how the change takes place in your body. Notice what happens in your solar plexus, in your chest, in your belly, in your heart, in your mind, in your face. So open your eyes. You feel the difference? When we can't tolerate, we contract, right? You feel that? You feel it in the heart. The heart just squeezes. The mind squeezes. The belly squeezes. You think about someone you love. Suddenly the whole being just goes, ah. And suddenly we're all open and loose and soft and mushy and beautiful. And so that practice of learning to tolerate and then moving from tolerance to respect to acceptance to love is a practice for us. So there's a lot of difference between tolerating and respecting, as we know. But don't stop at respect. Keep challenging yourself. You've only got a few years left of life. We all only have a few years. Few might be 60 or 70 or 80, but that's still a few. The scheme of things, it's very short. And of course, since none of us knows whether the few means 80 or the few means 2, or the few means a few hours, since we have no way of knowing, why not do all of that which we know we need to do anyway? Sooner rather than later. Why go to your deathbed with a really long to-do list? It's just going to create stress at the end. I mean, think about your to-do lists now. And that's when you're in full faculties. When you don't have nurses rushing in every 30 seconds to check your vital signs. When your bowels work, your bladder works, your digestion works, when you can sleep, when you're not in pain. If in our full faculties we can't make it through our to-do lists, especially our spiritual to-do lists, why carry them to your deathbed? When in addition to being in pain, systems of the body is going to stop functioning, you're going to have nurses running in all the time. Why not allow yourself at that time to just rest and relax and prepare to move on? Get done whatever you need to get done now. Have things you can't tolerate? Learn to tolerate them. Have people you can't love? Learn to love them. You don't have to love their actions. You don't have to love their personalities. You don't have to love their behavior. But at least love the spirit of who they are in such a way that their behaviors and their actions don't keep you up at night. Don't make you tense in the heart and the stomach and the mind. Don't allow it to be something that you carry with you for the years of your life. When you know you've got to do something, do it now. It's like students who, come home from school and play and watch TV and do all of that, and then they go for dinner and finally sit down to do their homework at 10 o'clock at night when they're exhausted, and then they stay up until 3, and then they wonder why they fail the exams. Right? I mean, as just a parent, a teacher, a mentor, a guide, anyone with common sense, you'd say, for God's sakes, do the work when you're awake and fresh. Don't wait until 10 o'clock at night when you're exhausted to sit down and study for your exam. Come home from school, freshen up, and then sit down and do your homework. So that later at night when you're tired, that's the time to read your book or watch your show or do whatever you want to do. Don't handicap yourself when you're already exhausted at 11 o'clock at night by trying to learn calculus. It's hard enough in the daytime. In the same way, why wait until those hours of our life to do what we know we need to do? Do them now. And what you'll find is not only is your deathbed going to be much more peaceful, But actually, all of these beautiful years that we have between now and then, they're going to be much more peaceful. They're going to change. Not just the time of your passing, but they're going to change the time of your living.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
OMTimes magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Do you have time to read that inspiring book or that blog post you've been meaning to get to? In your busy world, how do you improve yourself and keep your life going? I'm Lisa Kay, and my Between Heaven and Earth radio show can transform your life just by listening. Be uplifted with inspiring topics, positive stories, and ideas that really work. Between Heaven and Earth radio is conscious living for your soul, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Like Baldwin with People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. I grew up loving circuses and other traveling animal shows, but it never occurred to me what life might be like for the animals. Training wild animals to do things they don't understand takes force. Routine discipline with a hook or whip with the heel of a boot shows the animal exactly who's the boss. Don't patronize animal acts. Please contact People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals.
757-622-PETA.
Welcome back. This is Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati with Inspiration and Transformation. What are the benefits of going into silence? So, Puja Swamiji, my guru, the head of Parmarth Niketan, observes 14 hours of silence a day. 10 at night to 10 in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon. In earlier phases of his life, he went into periods of silence up to over a year and a half. 40 days was pretty standard, the turn of the season several times a year. So silence is something that we encourage a lot here. Taking vows of silence is something that's very, very core to the Indian spiritual tradition, to the Vedic traditions. Now, first of all, it's important to understand that silence doesn't just mean mouth is closed. That helps. That's sort of a non-negotiable aspect of it. But that's the beginning, not the end. It's not just an absence of speaking. It's actually also an absence of a refraining from other types of noise that keep us from experiencing the fullness of silence. A lot of us think of silence as just an absence of noise. If you say, oh, it's really silent, what it means is there's no noise. But silence within ourselves is not an absence of noise. It's actually a presence of divinity. It's a presence of experienced bliss and peace and divine presence that we can't hear most of the time because there's too much noise. There's too much noise of our own voices. There's too much noise of our heads planning what we're going to say next. There's too much noise of the TVs we're listening to or whatever we're listening to. There's too much noise of the conversations we're having. And so we can't actually drop into the truth. And so when we observe silence, it's not I'm in silence, but yeah, you can just jabber away at me. It's, I'm in silence, dropping as deeply as I can into the truth of who I am. And so you don't always have to go into a cave to be silent. In fact, Pujya Swamiji emphasizes that in our homes, everyone, married people, parents, should observe silence at least an hour a day, not while you're sleeping. Because it does many things. So first of all, what it does is it gives us an opportunity to experience actually the fullness within ourselves. And it doesn't mean that nobody can talk to you. If you have a child or a spouse who needs to tell you something important, no problem. But it really is an invitation to others in the home, in the office place, to curtail unnecessary conversation around you, to support that silence that you are in. And what it does is it gives us that experience of the fullness within. It also gives us an incredible teaching of how to grab the space between a thought and an action. How many people here have ever said something that you later regret? Raise your hand. Has anybody not ever said something that you later regret? Okay, right, so unanimous. So, how does that happen? You think later, oh, that wasn't me, and we have to go back to people and say, oh, I'm sorry, that wasn't what I meant. Wo mera matlab nahi tha. Well, you said it. If it wasn't what you meant, why did you say it? Like, who was in charge of your brain at that moment that something you didn't mean managed to come out of your mouth? Who else is in there pulling the strings, making you say things that you don't mean? What silence gives us is a teaching and a practice of having a choice before we speak. Because what happens when you go into silence, at least the first few days of it, even if you're in a long, extended silence, the first few days, the mind will think of something to say. It'll think of what you're going to say next, what you have to tell someone. And then automatically you'll say, oh, wait, I'm in silence, I can't. Or somebody will do something and you'll be about to say something to them. And then you realize, oh, wait, I'm in silence. And so you stop. And that teaching is incredibly profound, because what it teaches you, if you practice silence for long enough, even if it's just an hour a day, if you do it enough days in a row, is, oh, wait, I actually have a choice. Those words were about to come out of my mouth, but then I remembered I was in silence. And so I stopped them, which means I actually have much more control and consciousness than I utilize on a daily basis. And so it gives us an opportunity in our lives to also grab that space. Even if I'm not in silence at this moment, do I really want to say that? Does that need to be said? In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna speaks about the righteous speech, tapas of speech. And he says it needs to be three things. In order for something to be considered dharmic speech, it must be true, of course, but it must also be kind and beneficial. And I've heard other teachers of other traditions add a fourth to that, which is, it must improve upon the silence. And so before we speak, it's a beautiful practice to really ask yourself, is this true? Is it kind? Is it beneficial? And 2 out of 3 doesn't count. And also, does it improve upon the silence? And if not, to be silent. But being silent is something very, very difficult for most of us, particularly those of us from abroad. You sit in an environment with people, and everybody feels, if there's 30 seconds of silence, suddenly people become very uncomfortable. Everybody's looking around, somebody think of something to say, like this is really uncomfortable. In India, that doesn't exist at all. I've been in 6-hour car rides between here and Delhi with a car full of people, pretty much no one of whom says a word for 6 hours. People who love each other, family members, friends, but just nothing to say that improves upon the silence. And so the practice of silence gives us that teaching. We lose a lot in speech. You lose a lot of energy. So if you're fasting, for example, if you're not eating, one of the teachings of fasting is you should also try to be as silent as you can, because speaking uses a lot of energy. And if you're not taking in food, careful how you use your energy. We learn it at high altitudes. You go on a high altitude trek. We go to Kailash Mansarovar. You go to Badrinath, Kedarnath, where you're short of oxygen. Speak less. You're unnecessarily using energy. If you're dehydrated, speak less. You're literally spitting out water molecules along with your breath. So silence rejuvenates and recharges us on many, many, many levels. Don't think, though, it's empty. It's full. And that's why it's such a beautiful experience, is when you allow yourself to really drop into it, you'll experience a fullness of the self that we don't usually get to experience because there's so much noise going on. And it's amazing because we then go to places, to courses, to retreats, to things to find silence, without realizing that actually, if I could just quiet the noises in my own head. There's a great demonstration. Chela, we'll do interactive satsang here for a moment. So I'm going to divide the room in half right here. So if you're on this side of the camera, you're group 1. Okay, raise your hand if you're group 1. Great. This side of the camera, you're group 2. Raise your hand if you're group 2. Great. Okay. So group 1, your job is to chant Om. On the count of 3, let's hear you practice. Just group 1. 1, 2, 3. Beautiful. Group 2, your job is to make as much noise, ruckus. The exact antithesis of what you think should happen here in satsang. Really go all out. Make as much ruckus, and I'm counting on our youngsters over here especially for it, as much ruckus as you possibly can on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Great, great, exactly. Now on the count of 3, the 2 groups are going to go at the same time. And then if I raise my hand on your side, it means you become quiet. I raise my hand over here, they become quiet. I raise my hand over here, they become quiet. Okay? Count of 3, everybody together, both groups together. 1, 2, 3. group one. Did you start chanting Om only when these guys became quiet, or were you chanting the whole time? Could anybody hear them? Why?
I couldn't hear myself.
Yep. Exactly. Too much noise. But the solution is not that we take this ruckus and go out in search of Om. Peace, quiet, divine connection, stillness. This is what most of us do. We take our ruckus, the ruckus in our mind, because this is what most of our minds sound like. We take the ruckus of our minds and we go out in search of peace, of Om. All we have to do is learn how to quiet the ruckus in our mind. That's what our spiritual practice is about. That's why we meditate. That's why we pray. That's why we do seva. That's why we observe silence. That's why we do all of these spiritual practices. It's because they quiet the ruckus. That's why we do our mantra jap, chanting. It quiets this so that the truth of who we are, which is this, emerges into our consciousness. It's always been there, but that's why I say silence is actually full. It's full of Om. It's full of peace. It's full of truth. It's full of divine connection. It's just absent of ruckus.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
OMTimes magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Do you have time to read that inspiring book or that blog post you've been meaning to get to? In your busy world, how do you improve yourself and keep your life going? I'm Lisa Kay, and my Between Heaven and Earth radio show can transform your life just by listening. Be uplifted with inspiring topics, positive stories, and ideas that really work. Between Heaven and Earth Radio is conscious living for your soul, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Like Baldwin with People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. I grew up loving circuses and other traveling animal shows, but it never occurred to me what life might be like for the animals. Training wild animals to do things they don't understand takes force. Routine discipline with a hook or whip with the heel of a boot shows the animal exactly who's the boss. Don't patronize animal acts. Please contact People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals.
757-622-PETA.
Welcome back. This is Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati with Inspiration and Transformation. I want to be a good person and do good things, but instead I find myself doing things that prove I'm bad and unworthy. How do I get past my fear of peace and joy? How do I truly give myself to God? So this is one of the most tragic ironies of most of our experience here on Earth. I've noticed it a lot more with people from the West than people from India. There seems to be, and this is of course a massively broad overgeneralization, but nonetheless it's what I've paid attention to and seen over the 23 years I've been here, is that there seems to be in India much more of an awareness in people of the core value of who they are simply because they took birth, of that core connection to God, of the core kindness of God for them, their deservingness of God's kindness. There's, in the West, an epidemic of an internal sense of, I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not rich enough. I'm not even on a deep level pure enough. I mean, superficially, we just get I'm not, thin enough or beautiful enough or funny enough or whatever. But it goes much deeper. I'm not worthy enough. I'm not worthy of God's love. I'm not worthy of God's connection. I'm not pure enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not divine enough. And it's tragic. It reminds me actually of a story that Jack Kornfield, a very famous Buddhist meditation teacher in America, tells of a meeting that he and some very small handful of other American Buddhist meditation teachers had with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And one of the meditation teachers asked His Holiness, how can we help people overcome self-hatred? And it took His Holiness's translator 10 minutes to even explain semantically to His Holiness what self and hatred mean in the same word. And His Holiness's English is actually quite good. But the confusion of these two words going together literally took 10 minutes with the translator to even understand what the guy had asked. And His Holiness then said, thinking that it was some really obscure, kind of non-relevant sort of question, says to this group of teachers, well, how frequently do you find this in your students? And they all looked at each other and were like, all the time? And His Holiness then said, well, have any of you ever experienced this self-hatred? And they all went. And what I love about that story, and there are several others like that, is it helped me coming from the West, and certainly someone who experienced and struggled with feeling not enough, and struggled with self-hatred, a feeling like, oh yeah, okay, so here's an interesting cultural divide. Because there's also stories, I won't tell them all here, but there's also stories of other enlightened, amazing Eastern teachers from the Buddhist tradition, from the Hindu tradition, who have had similar types of experiences and stories with disciples, devotees, students from the West who experience this. There is something ingrained in way too many of us that because we are unworthy, and it's actually inherently unworthy. It's this sense that I have to do something to become worthy. And if I don't, I'm not worthy. Now, some of it, not to put blame on parents by any means, all parents are just doing the very best they can, but it's important to be conscious. Some of it comes in parenting styles. So we say things to our children, meaning well and meaning to just teach them some discipline, like, your room is a mess. You're a bad boy. Oh, you cleaned up your room. That's great. Your mama's good boy. Now, something as small and innocuous as cleaning a room becomes a lesson of, I am good or bad, worthy of mom's love or not worthy of mom's love. In one case, I get a spanking or certainly not a hug. In another case, I get a hug, a lap, maybe some freshly baked cookies. So I'm worthy of love based on something I've done. And whether it's a clean room, whether it's a grade in school, whether it's some other achievement or lack thereof. As parents, we give and withdraw our love based on what our children do much more than we should. Discipline is important, of course. But it has to be, or it should be, a form of discipline in which they understand, I love you, and your room needs to be clean. Because I'm not going to wash that since you didn't even wear it, you just pulled it out of your closet and threw it on the floor. That's a waste of water. It's a waste of detergent. It's a waste of energy. Your room needs to be clean because then when you're looking for a sweater tomorrow, you're going to be late for school because you're not going to find your sweater under the pile of clothes. Your room needs to be clean because our minds function according to our surroundings. And when our surroundings are a mess, it tends to make our minds a little confused. So you can give them all kinds of reasons. No clean room, no dessert, no problem. But no clean room, no hugs. That's the problem. So one piece of it is parenting, but it's not only that. It's also an entire culture through advertising, through marketing, through so much of our cultural tradition that continues to ingrain in us. You're not enough. You're not good enough until and unless you buy this, wear that, do this, look like that, own this, achieve that. And so while we may not buy all the products that are advertised, we buy the message, which is who I am, isn't enough. And if we got it in our young childhood, especially if we come from a situation where we actually were abused or where we actually had parents who weren't able to give us the love that presumably they would have liked to be able to give us, parents who themselves were struggling with issues of self-love, parents with addictions, parents with other issues. We grow up feeling not worthy, because in our very first experience, we weren't worthy of love. And so what we then end up doing in life becomes much more problematic, is we end up recreating situations that allow us to live in alignment with that belief. So if I have a belief that says I'm unworthy, not good enough, I'm going to keep creating situations that prove to me that I'm not worthy. I'm not going to let myself be worthy, because as painful as it is not to feel worthy, that's a pain I know. I've been living with that for 30, 40, 60, 70 years. I know that pain. That's a pain that's part of my identity, so we're good. But the pain of actually experiencing worthiness means, oh my God, the way I've lived my whole life wasn't true. There was an alternative. There was an alternative of how to feel. There was an alternative of choices to make. And that's a really hard thing to do in our life, is to look back and realize, wow, the pattern, the drama, the story, the truth, the identity based upon which I have made all the choices that I made since I moved out of my parents' house are ones that I didn't have to make because they were made out of untruth. And that actually is much scarier for people than living with the same pain. And so we continue to recreate situations. Oh, you're just on the verge of succeeding, but you've got a pattern that says you're never going to succeed because at some point in your childhood someone said to you, you're stupid, you're worthless, you're never going to become anything. So that's your pattern? Because you had an elder sibling or cousin who was much smarter, much more productive than you were, and you were told you're never going to be like this one, he's the good one, she's the good one. That became your pattern. I'm the stupid one, I'm the lazy one, I'm the one who doesn't succeed. And so we live our lives by these. And now you're on the verge of success. And that ego voice in the mind says, wait, this is going to undo, it's going to unravel my entire sense of who I am. So as sweet as success is, it's not nearly sweet enough to unravel my entire identity. and all the choices I've made throughout my life. So we keep doing it. And this is where courage is so important. What I love about courage is that the root of the word courage is the same root as the French word cœur, which means heart. And so courage is all about an open heart. And that's where it takes the courage to say, just as my parents, just as my society, just as whoever gave me this teaching was doing the best that they could, so I've done the best that I could throughout my life. I've done the best that I could with the patterns I had, the toolboxes I had. But now in this moment, in this brand new moment, this auspicious moment of a new beginning, I have a choice to do something different. I have the opportunity to actually see the truth. I have the opportunity to free myself of that pattern. And that's what we use our courage for, is to step into that unknown. What would life be like if I didn't think that I were a failure? What would life be like if I didn't think I was the stupid one or the worthless one or the lazy one? And give yourself an opportunity to find out. And it's never too late. It doesn't matter how old you are. Pujya Swamiji always says, whenever you wake up, it's morning. So whenever that moment is for you, and tonight's such a beautiful night because it's the auspicious time of Ganeshji, the God, the energy of new beginnings. Realize I'm not my pattern. There's not one cell in my body today, not one, that was abused, abandoned, betrayed, cheated, spanked. Assuming, of course, that only happened to you in childhood. There's not one cell of my body with me today to whom that happened in my childhood. Or even if it happened in my adulthood more than 7 or 8 years ago. Every single cell of the body sloughs and regenerates within 7 or 8 years. The skin cells, which are usually the ones that actually get physically injured, if we've been physically injured, they slough off every few days. So who's the you who isn't worthy? Who's the you who was abused or abandoned or betrayed or told you're stupid? Where is that you? Doesn't exist. There was a child to whom these things happened. Allow yourself to feel compassion and love for that child, but to recognize that isn't you. There's not one cell of your body today that was there. So allow yourself to walk into a new way of being, based on the real truth of who you are, which is divinity. Divinity inside. We are created not just by the Creator, but of the Creator. Which means that all of the properties of the divine Creator are the properties of us. Purity, light, peace, bliss, divinity. That's who we are at our core. Allow yourself to know that. And just keep walking, one foot in front of the other, every day. And you'll get there. You could get there tonight.
This brings to a close this hour of inspiration and transformation. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so glad to be together with you all each week. And I look forward to being together again next Thursday, same time, on OMTimes Radio.